Who's this? What do you want?
What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to the Donuts podcast. I am your host, Justin Metcalf. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. You might have realized this is the second episode that has been dropped recently. Actually, the third episode today. It's Wednesday, so I've already dropped one episode that I recorded as promised. But as I told you in the last episode, I'm going to put 3 of the first 3 Treehouse of Horror episodes out today. I just said episode like 14 times. Sorry, I have ADD. 1, 2, 3, 4. And OCD. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here we are with Treehouse of Horror 2, which is in season 3, episode 7. And the original air date was October 31st, right on Halloween, 1991. I remember watching this. I'm not kidding. I loved trick-or-treating. I went every single year until I was obscenely too old for it. And I vividly remember this year because I went out trick-or-treating and then I came back in time to watch it, which was at 7 p.m. And then I watched the episode and then I went back out and did more trick-or-treating. It was awesome. Loved it. So I still to this day remember the day this came out. And further along in the series that we get, the more I can remember. Like pretty soon we'll go over the Who Shot Mr. Burns episodes. The first episode ended a season, and the second, the continuance started a season. And we will talk about everything we went through, the trauma that we experienced as children, waiting a whole summer to get that next episode. It was brutal. But anyway, so here we are. I've got everything set up this time properly. I've got the best joke ready. I've got my my trivia questions ready. And so, for example, the best joke, I think I'm going to start a new format where I bring it up at the beginning of the episode because I do keep missing it. And there's a lot of jokes. And I like to point out what I think is my favorite one, the best joke. And so I've got it ready, and it's don't hate me, but again, it's the prank call to Mo. Look, I love the gag. Okay, I love the bit. It was funny, and the further along in the series we get, the less often this is going to be my favorite joke because other gags are introduced and other funnier jokes and better writing is done. And at the time for this episode, I think this was the best joke. So instead of trying to repeat it and butchering it like I've been known to do, I have got it queued up and I'm going to play it for you. You're welcome.
Hold on, I'll check. Hey, everybody. I'm a stupid moron with an ugly face and a big butt, and my butt smells, and I like to kiss my own butt. Wait a minute.
Okay. I can already hear the more cynical of you right now saying, that's not funny. Because, or you don't get it because of the way that that he says it, because he's not like repeating something that's hidden, like obviously somebody would know that was, you don't repeat that. That's the joke. That's the gag for this one. I know the rest of them are, they're hidden. There's funny names, Huge Ass and Jacques Strap. But in this one, that's the joke. It's first of all, there's no way that Bart was able to say all of that in the 3 seconds of pause or less that Mo had, which is one layer of the joke. But then the rest of it is the joke is obviously somebody's not going to hear that and then just blindly repeat it. So if you're not laughing, it's because you didn't get it. And if there's one thing I've learned in 4 decades on this planet is jokes are funnier when you have them explained to you. Except, no, they're not. So you should be ashamed of yourself. But hey, at least now you get it. So, there's that. So, fun facts about this episode. This episode marks the first use of the scary names in the opening credits. I mentioned that last time that became, a regular gag. and this is when we first get it. It also has the opening sequence of gravestones, like the the first one. Um, so we get both, which is fun. And this particular episode features parodies of classic horror and sci-fi works, like the Twilight Zone. I remember last episode it was a parody of Tales from the Crypt. But back to this one, sorry. Frankenstein and the Thing with Two Heads, as well as the invasion of the body snatchers. We see this a lot in film and TV show. Like writers and animators, directors, they pay homage to film that they have seen, like stuff that they were inspired by, stuff they grew up on. And it's the same here for the Simpsons too. There's a lot of that. A lot of the references point back to that. So I think it's fun to make that connection, and I hope you do too. And this episode won an Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program. That's how good it was. It was only the second installment of the Treehouse of Horror series, but it was that good. I don't think this was their first Emmy, but this episode did win an Emmy for Outstanding Animated Program. Let's talk trivia. Do you guys like the trivia? Do you enjoy this? I would kind of toyed with it, and the beginning it was more like whose line is it anyway, where I don't really track the points, but now we kind of can, like I'm still doing it, and you get a point for every answer, and some of these questions have multiple answers. So for real, are you enjoying this? Do you like the trivia? Do you do the homework? And if so, I tricked you last episode, the Halloween special, because you didn't know I was going to do that. But I did tell you I was going to do the first three, so maybe you took a break and did your homework, and you have watched the second Treehouse of Horror. I would advise you to now go watch Treehouse of Horror 3, because that is the next episode dropping in like an hour. So get to it. Let me know what you think about trivia. I'm honestly, genuinely curious to know your thoughts. Okay? So here we go. Question number one. What are the names of the tombstones in the opening credits? I did this last time, and there were like 10 tombstones. There are not as many in this one. There are like four or five. I have it written down later in my script, but I don't know right now. There aren't as many, but there's still more than one. So if you're falling behind, you haven't been doing your homework, and you're not doing really well on the trivia, this could be an opportunity for you to beef up your score, and then tweet it, and make sure to tag me, uh, donuts 742 on the X. Okay. Question number two. What does Lisa bribe Bart with to let her sleep in his bed? Because she had a bad dream. Because the first segment, this is broken up into three segments. First segment is her nightmare. So she goes into his room and says, I had a bad dream. Can I sleep in here? He says no. So she bribes him. What's the bribe? What is it? Question number three. What does Bart suggest Homer get? Excuse me. What job does Bart suggest Homer get after he loses his job at the power plant? Dun dun dun. Okay, you have approximately a number of minutes to get these right. Nobody's stopping you from pausing and going watching the episodes, but could you sleep at night cheating, doing it like that? You should, because nobody. It's fine. Do what you do what you want to do. Okay, let's get into it. The first segment is the monkey's paw. So this is the first nightmare. Like I said, this is Lisa's nightmare, and a very very funny segment. I love this segment. They start in Marrakesh, and there's some some funny geographical jokes right away. Homer makes an obscure reference, and if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's funny. But anyway, so The shop owner that Homer runs into is this creepy dude, and um, he sells him a monkey's paw, and the monkey's paw grants 3 wishes, and he says each wish has disastrous consequences. He warns him about it, and then what's really funny, very very funny joke is he goes to tell Marge. She asks where he got it, and then he turns around and he says, "Well, from the shop right there," and it's missing. And that's why it's funny. That's like a very common theme. A lot of people use that bit to like add some cloaked, shadowy, uh, mystical thing to their story. But then he says, "Oh, wait, it was right over there," and then it shows the guy at the stall, and he waves and talks to it. It's funny. So here it is, though. It's a classic. The theme, and it's a "be careful what you wish for" theme. We saw a lot of it in film and TV growing up, and it was pretty common because the lesson was always you wish for something, and on the surface you get what you wish for, but what you realize is that there are a lot of other nuances and hidden things that pop up that you don't want, and it's like a slap on the face with the backhand after you get your wish. Um, and I think what it teaches is like, be happy with what you have. The grass isn't always greener, but I think the Simpsons do a really good job with it in this episode. There's escalating absurdity with the Simpsons wishes and their outcomes. Um, the first wish goes to Maggie, which is hilarious. She wishes for a new pacifier, and it's delivered in this like beautiful old Rolls Royce limousine. It's funny. And then Lisa wishes for world peace, and it goes well. She gets world peace, and everything on the planet is terrific. But then King and Kodo show up, the aliens that we will soon. I mean, speaking past tense, we have known and loved, but now have become like a standard for Treehouse of Horror. So they make their second appearance in the second Treehouse of Horror, and they the they show up and they take over by just using like primitive weapons, slingshot and like a billy club and uh, a bat with tape on it, and that's the joke. We've got world peace, so now nobody can fight back. So they start to take over the planet, right? And then Homer decides with the third wish that he's gonna finally get it right. And so, of course, a logical person would be thinking, "We'll do something about what just happened to the Earth." But this is Homer Simpson. he, he wishes for a perfect turkey sandwich. He's like, "I don't want any weird, strange things and weird, like cursed pickles." I don't remember these. It's so funny. I don't want to ruin it, so you need to watch it. It's hilarious. And the turkey's dry. So he starts crying and wailing like that's the end of the world. So, very well written bit. I thought the jokes were just stacked on top of each other. It's hilarious. So now what? Right? So here's where it gets even funnier. He ends up giving the monkey paw to Flanders. And Flanders, he's thinking Homer's thinking Flanders is going to screw up even worse, and Flanders fixes everything. He says, my first wish is to fix this alien invasion," and it immediately gets fixed. And then Flanders says, "I guess now I should spruce up the old house," and it turns into this beautiful, gorgeous mansion. Here's the hidden joke there. Not so hidden. It's not very subtle. He's a man of God and a man of not material wealth. He's not. I mean, he's well to do. We've seen in many episodes they've got good gadgets and they're well taken care of. But he's not a materialistic man. Okay, it's funny that he not only wishes for a big house and wealth, but he actually gets it, and it doesn't backfire on him, which is hilarious and upsets Homer, obviously. So here's a question for you. How does this segment play with the concept of fate and free will? Because I like this isn't new. I like to get analytical here. Okay, these episodes were written by very intelligent people, and it wasn't just a bunch of dumb gags and slapstick comedy thrown together. There were themes, and there was a lot of thought that went into these. There's also some dark humor and social commentary in the segment that I'm what do you pick up on it? Do you see the kind of like what I was just saying with Flanders? We know Flanders, and in these episodes, Treehouse of Horror, we see a lot of characters depicted as far different from how we know them. It's like they're one time of year, their winter solstice, where they get to come out and be their true selves, for one day a year. And that's how I always viewed it growing up, and that's part of what made it so exciting. And again, it was like there was no, again, meaning I talked about this last episode, there was like no repercussions to it. Like anything could happen in these segments, in these 3 segments of the episode, and it didn't matter. The next segment picked up from the beginning, like nothing happened. And then next week, the episodes didn't happen. It was just it was fun to do that once a year. It wasn't overdone, and gave the characters, the writers, a lot of freedom with the characters to do a lot of really cool stuff. So wondering what your thoughts are on that. First of all, the first segment, but then let's go into the next segment, the Twilight Zone one. And this one's called the Bart Zone. Bart discovers that he has the power to control people with his mind. Dun dun dun. And as such, and like I said, so that was Lisa's nightmare, the monkey one, and she goes into Bart's bed, and then now Bart's having a dream. Sorry, I wanted to make that connection. It's important. Here's the thing that I want to discuss in this segment, because a lot of really absurd things happen. Like the entire town is just at his will. They do whatever he wants. Principal Skinner is singing on the intercom. Everyone's praising him for the really awful, dumb things that he does. And he's got absolute power. So I think the theme that is portrayed here is absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's a famous quote attributed to 19th century English historian Lord Acton, where he says power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that when you have absolute power, there's almost, nobody has ever had absolute power, so we don't know for sure, but we can see from when people do get any certain monicum of power, it ends up corrupting them almost every time. You see it in politics, and you see it in leadership of organizations. There's just so much corruption that comes with power. And that, I think, is it's the overt theme here that's being portrayed, is that with his absolute power, you can see nothing good happens at the end of it. And his reign is just, it makes everybody miserable. His use of powers and the consequences, he seems to just not care about. And then at the end, well, that's actually a joke at the end, but we'll talk about that in a second. How do you think this episode, in terms of how it satirizes the family dynamics and societal norms, how do you think it does with that? Right? Think about it. I know this is very, very pungent, his power, but wouldn't you agree that to some extent there are parenting styles that allow that kind of abuse from children? where a kid says what he wants and the parents just like, whatever, I'll do it. I get it. This is not, I mean, this is obviously over the top, but I still think that there's some satire here about those family dynamics that are, well, I don't want to, I'll get off my soapbox. You tell me what you think. Did you pick up on the same things, or am I just all alone in life like normal? There's lots of good visual gags, like Bart tries to change the way his cat is because it's the same, it's just a boring cat, and that's funny. Um, but there's some other funny situations that are created by Bart's powers. It's a good little bit. Here's the last joke of the bit, though. The funny thing, it ends with Homer and Bart connecting, and Homer asks him for a favor. He says, "Well, you could change me back or give me my body back." Bart says, "You got it." And it's this sweet little moment. And part of you thinks maybe he's gonna, be regular Bart and do something mean, but no, he gives him his body. And he says, "Oh, thanks, son." And then they hug, and that's when Bart wakes up screaming because that's his nightmare. That's the joke. It's funny. So then Bart and Lisa both go running into their parents' room because they both had nightmares. That's when the next bit starts. So the transition, I think, is really well done. And then now Homer has his nightmare. There's lots to talk about in this one, but this segment, If I Only Had a Brain, is where Mr. Burns is an evil scientist. What a shock! And he has a robot that he has built with Smithers, and the robot needs a brain. So they're looking at their computer screens. Sorry, their monitors, their CCTV, security camera monitors, like they do. It's like a quintessential scene in Mr. Burns' office, and they're trying to decide who to fire, and they fire Homer, and so Homer gets the can, and then that's when they go and you can see Burns's robot, and so then it cuts to Homer trying to find a new job and ends up getting one. Oh, I did it again. I did it again. I'm going to talk about what Homer does, and it's one of the trivia questions. Daggone it. Sorry. Kind of. I mean, I'm not that sorry. So he ends up being a gravedigger, and that's the answer to question number 3. And so he's taking a break after maybe 4 seconds of work, falls asleep in his open grave. And then Mr. Burns and Smithers are walking around, and Burns calls it he says he's like a kid in a candy store walking around in the in the graveyard. And they get Homer and they bring him back to the lab, and they cut open his head. And the funny thing is, I mean, they pull out a brain, but when the top of his dome that they cut off hits the ground, there's a very hollow plunk when it hits the ground, which is funny. But then also, like, they pull out a brain, so I think they landed it still pretty well. Mr. Burns way out of character. Obviously, I mean, already out of character as an evil scientist. Puts the brain on his head and dances around. It's funny. So then there's the bit. There's a bunch of jokes in there. You should watch it if you haven't already. Let's get to the analyzing and the discussion. I thought about this. I don't know. I was over analytical when I was preparing this one, but I was thinking about analyzing the ethical implications of body modification and artificial intelligence. I don't think I'm going to go into that though, because it's kind of getting away from the whole shtick that the Simpsons are doing in the Treehouse of Horror, right? That's the joke, you know. Being too analytical of these episodes is probably not going to get us anywhere. Let's just enjoy the humor, right? Because that's what it was. What about the humor that's derived from Homer's brain in a robot body, like the ability to see through several layers of concrete to the donuts that are, in the plant, and he just walks through the walls. How do you think this segment explores themes of identity and sentience or consciousness? Huh? It's pretty good, right? I get super nerdy when I'm preparing these. I'll tell you. Not everything I write down in my outline actually gets put on the episode. Some stuff as I'm reading it or right before as I prepare, I'm like, that's pretty lame. But anyway, what do you think about the visual effects and the portrayal of futuristic technology? Like one could argue that King and Kodos and their spaceship is futuristic technology, and it was even in last season with the first Treehouse of Horror. But with this robot and the whole Frankenstein scene, are you tired of me saying robot yet? I don't care. That's how I say it, and I like it. So you can just hush your face. But what do you think about the visual effects? How do you think this episode stands up? Last time we talked about the balance between horror and comedy for the Treehouse of Horror or the Simpsons Halloween special. How do you think this episode fared with its balance of horror and comedy? Same as the first episode? Better? Worse? What do you think? And then you compare it and contrast it to the first Treehouse of Horror. How does it contribute to the evolution of that format, of the Treehouse of Horror format? Starting off with a warning from Marge. Oh, there was another warning. Dang it, I didn't even talk about it. It's another warning from Marge. Essentially, it's, you didn't listen to me last time. You're not going to do it this time. It's funny. But then there's that format, and there's so many bits that go into it. There's the green glowing dripping font. There's the names that are funny names in the credits and the tombstones at the beginning, and that eventually goes away. There's just so many things, and then having the 3 segments of 3 separate stories. It's become, obviously it's successful. It's become very, very famous, very well known. So how do you think this episode fared? That's my question. What are some of the most memorable moments or quotes? Or what are your favorite moments? What's your favorite scene? Favorite joke? I shared my favorite joke. What's yours? If you see it, like I found a good number of these jokes, people have already clipped on YouTube. So if you've got a favorite joke, go find it on YouTube, copy it, and then paste it in a tweet, send it to me, and let's talk about it. So easy to communicate like that nowadays. So, but share with me, engage with me, talk to me, please. Here's some more questions. Did you find? No, not did you. Which of these segments did you find the funniest or the most disturbing? Because that's something I wanted to talk about. Some of these Treehouse of Horror episodes were disturbing. That was the intent. Like Matt Groening even said when he put out the first Treehouse of Horror, the Simpsons Halloween special, the point was to disturb the public. I think those were his words, something along those lines. That was the whole point. It was to shock. Oh, that's what it was, to shock the public. So, I mean, that's what they're doing intentionally. I remember sometimes being shocked by these, but that was part of the allure, part of the humor, part of the fun. So, that being said, I asked this question last time too. What's your favorite Treehouse of Horror episode or segment? Like I told you, mine was when Homer spends a day in hell because he sells a soul to the devil for a donut. I don't remember the other 2 segments of that episode right now. I will soon. It might even be next season. But I do remember that segment. I loved it. I remember loving it as a kid. I watched it over and over again, thought it was hilarious. There's lots of great jokes and lots of jokes I didn't get until later because there's like historical figures in it that Satan calls as the jury, names I didn't understand. Like starting lineup of a hockey team that I didn't know at the time. That's a very funny joke, and we'll talk about that when I do that episode. But there you go. Do you have any stories, this is what I'm going to leave you with. Personal stories of like, be careful what you wish for. Like, have you experienced anything like that? Like a be careful what you wish for kind of story in your life? And if you do and you're comfortable sharing, share it. Let me know. So you can get me at shartenpants@gmail.com or on Twitter at donut742. Let's do the trivia answers real quick. And it starts with, I already ruined the third one. I'm sorry. He's a gravedigger. That's the job that he suggests, the Bart suggests. The tombstones. There aren't as many. There's 5 total in this one. Bambi's mom, Jim Morrison with peace signs for the O's, and that was the fashion at the time, and dozens of like written lyrics and notes from fans. And then the next one was Cajun Cookin'. The next one's Walt Disney, and it's in the classic Disney font. And then the last tombstone says, lose weight now, ask me how. That's good stuff. For the record, there's also very, very funny tombstone jokes in line for the ride, the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland. So next time you're there, I'm pretty sure they're at Disney World too. I think they're harder to see. But bunch of tombstones, and like in the mausoleum as you walk past it, lots of funny puns as names. You're welcome. Okay, and the last one, what is the bribe that Lisa offers Bart to let her sleep in his bed? It was a candy necklace. Hey, thanks again for listening. I'm so glad that you spend your time with me. I appreciate that you are enjoying this. I hope you're enjoying it as much as me. I love this show. I hope you do too. And I will see you next time. See ya.
Seriously, I am getting so tired of those stupid Flandersisms.